Hello, this is the Electric Wolf again. So today I want to talk to you about procedurally generated meshes, and this is going to be in Unity. And I've done this before. I've actually got some assets on the asset store for this. I've got Road Builder, which you can see on screen at the moment, which is a prime example of procedurally generated meshes. And in this case, it's for a road, and it has a node at the very end here, and it has a node down here that you can see with the yellow marker. And it's what it does, it builds that road dynamically when you press, in this case, create mesh, and it uses the contours that you define here to define the curb that you want for your road. And as you can see here from the wireframe, it breaks it down, so it's not just one big poly, it's generated it all the way down with the shape that you wanted. And this is one basic principle of procedurally generated. It's basically you're creating the mesh from code. You're not just using a pre-built mesh. I want to show you how to do that within Unity. So if we get rid of that and we pop straight into Unity, I've got some base code I want to talk you through. So this is an empty object, but importantly, it has a mesh renderer and it has a material already assigned to it. In this case, I've actually got a script as well, and this script has in this case industrial bricks too, which is just a very basic material. I'll just bring that up to demonstrate. You can see down here it's just a simple brick pattern, and you'll see that this is reproduced when we create the mesh. So if we go back to our scene and select our object, so here I've just got an empty object, and when I press build mesh, it creates a single poly in this case, and that's all done by the code. This is not very glamorous, I understand, but I'll talk you through the process and also show you how to add to this as well. So let's have a look at the code. So code side, I've got my create mesh object. That's the one that's on the object itself, and that's the one where the button clicks come in. And then I've got a mesh builder, which is like a helper class that helps keep in track of the vertices and the UVs that are needed for this. And then I've got a UV set, and that will come onto the UVs much later. I want to deal with the actual polygon generation to start with. So with the polygon generation, let's bring up something I can draw with. If you want a basic polygon, so you have to give it 4 points, obviously, and we'll break it down into 2 triangles and then apply it on the mesh, and it will get rendered out. So if we just go back to Unity, let's just follow the example here. If I put it into wireframe, you can see the 2 triangles are faced here. So I'll use that in the example, so we're matching. So now I want to show you the code with the quad that we have. So in this case, it's starting slightly backwards. So if we go back to the object itself, we're actually starting down at this coordinate here, and we're moving away. So we're actually on this side. This is a positive, but because we can't see it on this side, I'm having to go on to the negative. So bear with me. This is actually a 1, but it looks like a -1 when we put it this way. So we go back to the code. So we're starting at 0, 0, 0, which is actually here. We'll label this A, and we're going up 1, which is B, to make the top, and then we're going far, which is from here because it's on 0, 0, 1, and that's going to be C. And then the last one here is up and across, and that's going to be our D value. So the first 3 values are sent over, or actually all 4. So the full quad is being sent over to this BuildQuad, and the BuildQuad is taking A, B, and C, and it actually stores the point and the UV set. So the points get stored as a list of vertices, and the UVs also get stored as a point of vertices. The points are a vector 3, and the UVs are only a vector 2. But more importantly, after we've added our point, the vertices, we return the index that it was added. And these indexes are used to build up the triangles. So the mesh vertices and mesh UVs are just an array. And they're just a store of points and UVs. When we come back here, we get all our different indexes of what we've added each of these to. We add it to a list of triangles. And the list of triangles goes back and references the mesh vertices and the mesh UVs to understand how to build these. So what we're saying is, I want to build this triangle. It's at index A, B and C. Go off and have a look at the vertices and the UVs in A, B and C. So now if we have a look at the triangle, it's going to be A, B and C. It's going to start at A, it's going to use B, and it's going to go dead and C, and then obviously that finishes it off going back to A, and that creates one triangle. The next line you can see it's D, C and B, which is D, it's different colour, D down to C, C to B, and B back to D, and that will be the second triangle. And this order dictates how it's shown. So if this was back to front, so for example if this was D, B, C, the polygon would face the opposite way. The normals would face away from us as it currently stands. So this is something we can play with later and we can demonstrate that. The other thing to note here is when we store our UVs, I'm storing a different part of a UV set. So my UV sets are basically 4 points, just as we have our ABCs, which dictate the texture, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And that's what's being passed in here. So we're using bottom right, and then we're storing it, and then the bottom, top right. So that's how we're getting different UVs associated with our different vertices, our points. The other really cool thing about this is when you store these sets, the vertices and the points and the UVs, you only have to do it once. So we've stored A, or set A if you like, once. We're only using it once. But set B, we're storing it once and we're using it twice. The next thing the code does, so that's building one quad. It's a lot of code just for one quad, and we'll come back to the UV sets. The next thing I need to do is actually apply those quads onto a mesh. So I've got apply mesh details again. It's in my helper class. So the very first thing I do is create a new mesh. In this case I'm calling it my mesh with a date. We set that on the actual object itself. So this is my base object. I'm getting the mesh filter and setting the mesh to my mesh, and you can see that here with today's date. The next thing, we take the list of vertices and we take the list of the UVs and we apply them both to the mesh so it's ready. Then we get the renderer from the base object and apply the material that we have. And the material is just stored in my script. And then we have to set all the triangles. So we take the list of triangles and we apply that. We tell the mesh that I've only got one set of triangles. We'll come back to that. And then I just recalculate normals and bounds. That determines the order, the outer bounds of the object, help with clipping and stuff. And then that's it. The mesh has been applied to our base object and we get to see it in game. So if we just go back to the UV sets, because we're going to have to touch on these at some point, let's do it now. A UV set I've actually got as four vector 2s, and again this is like the 4 points that we have here, but these are points on the texture. So currently we're using the values down here, so we've got 0, 0, 0y, xy, 0, 0. So it's pretty much like we have here. So we're starting in one corner and going back to another. Let's clear that. So this is all about the UVs. So it doesn't matter what size the polygon is, this is just about the UVs at each of those coordinates. So this is obviously 0, 0, and then this will be 0, 1, x is 1, y is 1, and that's why I've got my 1s here. Then there's 1, 0, and then 1, 1. and that means we're using all of the texture. And if we go back to the code and change that, I'm going to say, well, I don't want to use the whole width of the texture. I only want to use like 1/10 of the texture width. So we should see the brick pattern distort. Build the mesh. You can see those textures are all stretched because we're only using 1/10 of the texture. So we're only using this portion. So this will probably have a brick pattern on it, but it's going to be, you can just make out some of it here, but it's going to be very stretched, and that's why it looks awful. So let's put that back to how it needs to be. There we go, back to normal. That's great. So that's a terribly simplistic version of how to build a single polygon, which is no use. So let's build on that. So let's get rid of all of that. What I want to do is define the size of a polygon we're going to build. So it's going to be the same code as we had before, except this time I'm using a little bit more maths. So we're starting with A000, which is the bottom corner, and I'm taking a copy of that, and when I come to do the top, I'm saying I want to go up, so I'm using the default up vector, multiplying it by the size that we have, and it may help you if we put braces around that, though it's not needed. So I want to go up by the size unit I have. In this case it's 1 unit, so it'll match exactly what we have. I'll get rid of those braces, they're not needed. And then the next thing I want to do is the far one, and that's taking the base coordinate again, and this time rather than going up, we want to go forward again by the same size. And then the last coordinate we want is the far top version, so we're going to take the top coordinate, because we've already adjusted it and gone up. So now I want to go forward. So we've gone up and now I'm going forward again by the size and multiplying it by that. So when we come to build the quad, it's going to basically look like what we had. Clear and build. There you go, it's exactly as it is. So what's the advantage? Well, let me show you. So now I can say, well, I don't want it a whole unit high, I want it half a unit high. So we come back here. I'm not going to show you do a clear, I'm just going to quickly build it and then you can see the difference straight away. So you can see that the size is now only half a unit, you can just make out on the grid down here. So in order to build a wall, it has to have 2 sides. So as what I want to introduce now is the width. I want a wall that's actually, let's set the size back to a single unit. I want the width to be 1/4 of a unit. And I'm going to take this whole array that we have here, just quickly copy that. Don't need these vertices because they're already defined. But here, I'm going to start it as the second wall, but the width, but the width is going to give me the starting point, and that's going to give me 2 polygons. Exactly 1/4 of a unit apart. So now if we clear the mesh and rebuild it, we get our single unit back, but then we have a second one, and as you can see, it's facing the wrong way. And this comes back to that triangle order that I spoke of earlier. So we need to adjust that, and the way to do it is to change the order that we apply these, and this will help flip that polygon for us. So what you need to do is take these 2 coordinates, which are like the far coordinates if you like, or rather than doing them last, we need to do them first. Put in the appropriate commas. So back in Unity, when we rebuild, you can now see that we've got the polygons are facing different directions, allowing us to have a wall, which is what we wanted. But the wall's got that gap at the end, so we need to resolve that as well. So if we take these coordinates again, and that's set, pop down here, we need to build this exactly as we did, but this time we're going to start back at 0. The up is going to remain the same size, but rather than going forward, we want to go right. And we want to go right by the width. same here, forward becomes right, and size is the actual width. So if we build that, it should go 90 degrees to the other polygons that we have. And then if we come back and build the mesh, there we are. We have that all defined. We have an end and two sides. Obviously we can do this for all the other sides however we like. But if we come in closer, you can see the textures are a bit naff. So got a nice texture pattern this side, but this side is all messed up. It's too squished. This is because we're still using the full width of the texture, even though the polygon is only a quarter of the size. So obviously we need to adjust that, and the way to do it is redefine the UV set that we want to use. And I'm going to use a new UV set, but this time I'm going to define it as the width, so it's going to be a quarter of a unit, and we just use this and pass it along. And back in Unity, when we build the mesh, you can see that is a much better texture pattern. It's the ratio is kept on all sides and it makes it look more natural. It's quite a chunky wall, so it's what we can do now, because we've used width consistently throughout. We can say, well, no, I don't want it 25 a quarter, I can do a tenth, for example. And when you come back to Unity, you can click build and you can see that's a much more natural width, and the texture pattern still works because you've put it in code and you're procedurally generating it. So that's all I'm going to show you today, because it's quite a big subject. The code base that I've shown you is going to be available. All the links are going to be below, be kept in this state so you can use it. Having a mesh builder as a separate file from the other objects you have, I think is vital. You can call this from any other class and build it as you need. Oh, one last point. This is only using one material. When you come to use meshes with multiple materials, you have to store those in the renderer, but also when you come to build your triangles, you need to keep them separate. So this index here is to tell you what submesh it's going to be, and you need to build so like if you had a house with a brick texture for the walls but you wanted a tile texture for the roof, that will be a separate submesh, and you'll need to store the triangles separately, but your vertices and UVs can be kept in the same array. There we go, nearly missed that bit. So again, thank you for listening and watching. I hope that's been useful to you. If you want more of these, please like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll produce some more. I may even revisit this topic with some more in-depth views on it. So this is just a start. So again, thank you for watching.